What shall I do now? Now my heart can break apart. My eyes all overflow with water. Now is my lover condemned to die. Ah, now they lead him toward Mount Calvary to the death place. See, he bears his cross upon his bare shoulders. Oh, lover, how they follow you, your friends grievously with crying and sorrow, your enemies mockingly to heap insult and enormity upon you. Oh, now they have brought him there. Now they raise up the cross. They set up the gallows. Oh, now someone strips my dear, and now they drive him up with whips and with scourges. How can I live for pity? I who see for myself my beloved man upon the cross, and his limbs so stretched that I can count every bone in his body. Ah, now how they drive iron nails through your fair hands into the hard cross through your beautiful feet. Oh, now from your hands and your feet so lovely streams the blood so pitifully. Now they offer my love who says he is thirsty vinegar, sourest of all drinks, mixed with gall, the most bitter thing, but he does not drink it. Oh, now, sweet Jesus, upon all your grief, they heap still more shame and insult. They laugh you to scorn where they see you hang on the cross, you, my lovely love, where with stretched arms you hang on the cross. Ah, that lovely body that hangs so pitifully, so bloody, and so cold. How shall I live now? For now my love dies for me on the dear cross. He hangs down his head and sends out his soul.
6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. There they gave a dinner for him. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one that was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He kept the common purse and used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me."
How precious to me are these, the feet of my Lord. Before them, I have been honored to sit and listen to his teaching. When my brother died, I clung to them and wept until my Lord, my friend, mingled his tears with mine. And now I honor them in the only way I know, for they're tired and sore. On them he's traveled far to be with us. On them he still has to walk a way which will be painful and difficult. Others might anoint his head or his hands, but not I. I will anoint his feet. Soothed and cleansed from my ministrations, they will carry him into the holy city for the Passover feast. And my heart tells me with sorrow that there they will be battered, despised. There they will stumble under a great weight. There they will be pierced in agony. How can Judas complain about the cost of my ablutions? Does he not know there is no cost too great for such a one as this? Does he not know even yet that our Master will pay a price far greater, will give, in fact, everything out of love for us? My hair and this ointment are my only treasures, and I will spend them in this one last service. See how the fragrance fills the house as his love has filled my heart.
Let us pray. Incarnate
As they led him away, they seized a man, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming from the country. And they laid the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. A great number of people followed him, and among them were women who were beating their breasts and wailing for him. But Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For the days are coming when they will say, 'Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will begin to say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if they do this when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?"
We belonged to that group of women called mourners. There were some of our sisters who would hire out to walk and lament in the funeral processions of those who had not many of their own to mourn for them. The rich, usually, who could afford to put on a show as though their departed had been well loved in life. But our work was different. We came to weep and wail for those who had no one to mourn their going and no resources with which to pay. The despised, the reviled, the criminal, going to their death at the hands of the hated Romans who hung our brothers on their horrid crosses. This was our service, our mitzvah. We walked with them in the public streets and raised our cries because somewhere these men had mothers, aunts, sisters whose shame would not allow them to come. This man, the one they called Jesus, he was different. A holy man, a rabble-rouser, who could know which stories were true? But unlike the others, he came not alone, but with crowds of women, women who wept without sobs, women who walked in silence, women whose very faces were longing to take away his pain. Women who bore their presence in this ignoble place with an honor we could not understand. And unlike most of these poor men, he took no comfort or support from our mission, As he came near, as always, we began to beat our breasts and wail louder. When we did so, he stopped and looked at us and commanded us not to weep for him. His voice was so weak, so gentle, and our cries so monstrous. It took a while to realize that it sounded like he was speaking curses on ourselves and our children. And we were silenced, shocked. We gaped at him and one another, and after he had passed by, we traded the snatches we had heard, trying to piece together his fearsome prophecy. Chastened and curious, we followed his cross out of the city. We did not know then that what he was speaking would come to pass, that the day would come when we would envy the barren, because they were spared the agony of seeing their children and their daughters' children die deaths as horrible as his own, while God's holy temple was destroyed and his people forever scattered.
Let us pray. Meanwhile, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing beside her, he said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." And then he said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home. After this, when Jesus knew that all was finished, he said, "I am thirsty." So they put a sponge full of wine on a branch of hyssop and held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the wine, he said, "It is finished." Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
Since it was the day of preparation, the Jews did not want the bodies left on crosses during the Sabbath. Especially the Sabbath was a great day of solemnity. Now there was a garden in a place where he was crucified, and in the garden there was a new tomb in which no one had been laid. And so because it was the Jewish day of preparation and the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there.
I do not know how long I have lain here. I do not know if it is night or day. I do not know if I am asleep or awake. When first they laid me here, my limbs were heavy against the cushions, odd twitches in my muscles, deep aches in my arms and shoulders. From the weight of holding him, I guess. How his own arms and shoulders must have ached. I stood and watched him hanging there, thigh muscles pushing to take the strain off as he struggled for each breath, until finally his legs collapsed and my own dissolved beneath me. They laid him in my lap as I sat in the dirt and held him, cradled him, rocked him. I tried to stand to bring him home, but I could not lift him, could not rise. Oh, my son, my child, when did you grow so big that I could no longer carry you in my arms? When did you grow so strong that you could drag that great tree trunk through the streets? I watched you stumble valiantly as its weight almost crushed you. Watched the Cyrenian lift it from your shoulders as easily as Joseph lifted you from my arms. I stumbled behind him to the place where we laid you. Later, someone else's strong arms brought me here. This room where I'm staying seemed as full of women as your tomb. I heard the concern in their voices, but their words made no sense, and their questions seemed idiotic. How could I be all right? How could anything be all right? So I made no response. Did they question you too, my son? Did you answer them? Someone put something wet to my lips. It may have been a cup of water or a sponge on a stick. I couldn't tell the difference. I don't remember drinking it. Someone put something wet to my lips, Slowly and carefully, they began to peel off my clothing, bloody, sweat-soaked, stuck to me in places. I felt such anguish for your nakedness when the soldiers did this to you, but for myself, I feel no shame. What is nakedness when the pride of your life has been stripped from you? They stole your clothing, you know, the tunic I wove. Can you cast lots for love? No one will cast lots for my garments. Dirty and stained as they are, they think even I don't want them. They're wrong. The stains and the smells are yours, all I have left of you. I wanted to hold them to me, bury my face in them, and breathe deeply of you. Gently, they washed my body, soaking away the dirt, soaking away all the traces of you as well. Their hands are experienced now, the same hands that helped me as I washed you, tenderly wiping the blood from your wounds, once more bathing my beautiful child before I lay him down to sleep. They slipped a clean tunic over my head. Then they wrapped a mantle around my shoulders and sat me in a chair, a parody of queendom. Then they began to work my hair. They were gentle at first, lifting and loosening with their comb fingers, just as I lifted and smoothed your hair away from your face and shoulders. But when they began to work with the comb, every stroke felt like thorns against my scalp, and I remembered the beads of blood which dripped from your brow. That image of your lovely, tortured face filled my mind as they led me to the couch. My heart and bones froze in response, and I began to shake with cold. Arms surround me, chafing, warming, as I tried to warm you. Despite the heat of the day, I could not stop the warmth from leaving your body, and you grew cold in my arms. They held a cup to my lips and forced me to drink. Bitter it was, wine, I think, laced with myrrh. Is this what they forced you to drink, my son? Did they drug you too? Did it help? When I had drunk it all, they laid me down on the cushions and tucked covers around me, smoothing and straightening them as carefully as the linens in which we enfolded you. And then they left me here, alone. And so I lie here still, enshrouded. I no longer feel cold. I no longer feel my body at all. I no longer feel. I do not know how long I have lain here. I do not know if it is night or day. I do not know if I am awake or asleep. I do not know if I am alive or dead. I do not care.
It was a day of preparation, and the Sabbath was beginning. The women who had come with him from Galilee followed, and they saw the tomb and how his body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and ointments. On the Sabbath they rested according to the commandment. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly 2 men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified, and on the third day rise again." Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them, who told them to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them.
I had lived since my marriage in Herod's household, where my husband held the honored position of steward. There I heard stories about this man, Jesus, how the great one, Herod's father, had tried to kill him when he was still an infant, how Herod had beheaded his cousin John, though he secretly admired him, how as Jesus' fame grew, Herod became daily more fearful that he was John's ghost come back to haunt him. I had been sickly for a long time, though Herod's physicians could find nothing wrong. I had heard the stories of Jesus' healings, but I dared not send for him, not to this household. One afternoon, hearing he was in the area, I slipped out. Cloaked and veiled, I hid myself in the crowd, trying to press as close as possible to him. He seemed so ordinary at first, and then it happened. His eyes looked into mine, and he spoke to me. His look and his voice were so compelling that I trembled and could not look away. It was then that I realized how sick I had been, for not only was I healed from that moment, but I was filled with such joy and energy, such exuberance for life, that all my existence to that moment seemed as nothing. After that, I could not stay away, nor could I give too much to repay his compassion. I provided for himself and his disciples all that could be spared from my household accounts, and I used my influence and connections to find him hospitality wherever I could. Much of this was secret, our little network of supporters. My husband, Kusa, was always afraid that Herod would discover my treachery in supporting this rabble-rouser. He was right to be afraid. My gratitude and adoration began to make me shameless, so that I even traveled with his group from Galilee to Jerusalem. There were other women in the company, but most were there by rights. Their sons or husbands were followers of the rabbi. And many others had been prostitutes, so their behavior was unimportant. But I, the wife of a great man, traveling around without my husband, was an unspeakable thing. Still, I couldn't believe it would end like this. I knew at the end how great was my shame in this association, but my shame was nothing compared to his. And he, who had saved my very life, I could not save. My position and influence could not stop this great ruthlessness which tore him from our midst. And our small group of women who had ministered to him so faithfully in life were powerless to minister to him in death. But oh, how we tried. We followed his corpse bearers to his borrowed tomb and then ran to our lodgings swiftly in the dusk. There we waited through that long and dreadful day. How ridiculous it seemed to keep Sabbath, when surely all the laws of God had been broken in this man's death. But the Master would have kept it, and in his honor, we observed the day. But as soon as night fell and the Sabbath was past, we began to prepare. I was still a rich woman, and nothing would be spared. The best spices, the best emollients. As early as we could, we left the house, taking our oblations to the tomb. I thought my despair could go no deeper until we found the tomb empty. Then I thought my heart would stop when we were told he had risen and gone on. What fearful joy! Oh, Master, that you, whom the grave cannot hold, should find a room in my heart.
Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Then Peter and the other disciples set out and went toward the tomb. Then the disciples returned to their homes, but Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." When she said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her.
Huddled on an empty roof, I spent a night of strangled sobs and silent tears, with no one to hold me but myself, and nothing to wait for but the dawn. On and off through the night, I heard the others' voices drifting up to me from down below. Murmur, 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 trying to figure out what they cannot understand. When I first came, they used to murmur that way about me. And they believe their own stories, of course. You've heard them, no doubt. That I was healed of a great sickness, that I was an adulterer. Better, that I was a prostitute, that I was cured of 7 demons. Well, maybe that last one is true. If insolence, immodesty, and impertinence are demons, if they are demons, then I'm sure I had them all, and all their brothers and sisters. They said I was uncontrollable. Women, girl children, must always be controllable. My parents and my brothers despaired of me. Mary, veil your face, cover your hair, move quietly, and don't disturb your garments. Bow your head, avert your gaze. Ah, who will want to marry such a shameful girl? Marry? Marry? Why would I want to marry? So I could be a servant in a world of men? So I could sit silently in inner rooms and speak only to children and servants? No, I wanted to feel the sun on my face and the wind in my hair, to look others in the face and speak about important things, to run and dance and sing and laugh, not to hide. And in this world, who does those things? Men, always men. Women who dare are called prostitutes, or, to spare your family shame, they say you are possessed. Me, I simply wanted to be free. Free. From the first time I met Jesus, I recognized a like spirit, except he didn't only want to be free, he was free. He did not worry what others thought. He did as he liked, and he said what he thought, and did not, quotation marks, keep his place. Well, that's why they killed him, of course. They could not stand the idea even of that much freedom. Oh, but I rejoiced in it. When I spoke to him, he did not chastise me. He did not make insolent remarks, nor did he ignore me. He simply looked at me and answered me as though I had every right to speak to him. He treated me as an equal. He talked, he smiled, he laughed, he listened. He acted as though it were perfectly normal that a man should speak to a woman in the middle of the day, in the middle of the street. And confronted with that kind of freedom, I drank it in. I studied it. And I began to learn. He did not cast out my demons. No, he gave them life. He gave them names. And I began to change. Because he looked at me without lust, I learned to be modest. Because he listened to my voice, I learned to be silent. Because he acknowledged my strength, I learned to be vulnerable. Because he allowed me to be angry, I learned how to love. Because he encouraged my freedom, I learned how to serve. Because he accepted me as a person, I learned to be a woman. He understood the deepest needs of my soul, and now he's gone. Gone without a look or a word, only for the others, not for me. Did he even know I was there? To them he spoke, to John and his mother. I prayed for a word, a look, and I hated my selfishness, thinking of my loss in the middle of his pain. I held Mary's shaking shoulders as she cradled his body, and all the time I wanted to slap her hands away and claim that caress for myself. I guided her home, I fed her, I wiped her tears, and I soothed her brow. I bathed her, combed her hair, and made for her a soft bed. And all the while I ached for someone to comfort me. But I am not Family. I have no rights to the luxuries of grief. I must be strong for others. In this house, surrounded by friends, I, who am no stranger to solitude, never felt so isolated, so alone in my life. And so I watched for the first signs of dawn, because I must, absolutely must. I must be there first. Oh, look, there, a touch of grey in the east. Now, a ray of light on the horizon. Quickly, down the stairs and through the courtyard. Let the others bring the oils and spices. I care nothing for those things. I must be there first. I must have a moment alone. Just a moment. That's all I ask. To gaze once more on his face, to touch again his hand, to speak the love which cannot be spoken, to say goodbye. Through the streets, out the gate, there, almost there. Oh, good, it's open. But where? What? No, they've robbed me even of this. The bastards! They've moved him. I must find him. I will find him. Please, God, is this too much to ask? Where is everyone? Oh, there's the gardener. Sir, please help me. My name. He said, my name. His voice, his hands, touching my hair, lifting my face, gently laughing, urging me towards home. Unthinking, I stumble forward and stop, I turn. But he's gone. But it was real. I can still feel his touch, hear his voice. Oh my God, he lives. Excited now, I begin to run. I must tell the others. That's it. He said to tell the others. Me. He gave the message to me. Me. Race for the house. Quickly. And all the while skipping, jumping, dancing in my head, the same refrain. He chose me, he chose me, he chose me. Burst through the door. John, Peter, I've seen him. He spoke to me, he touched me. He lives. Quit staring. Hurry, get Mary. He lives, I tell you. He lives.